All right. Allegedly, we are live on a bunch of channels. So this is a total and utter experiment. But I think if all is going well, we're live on like Instagram, Facebook, Twitch, YouTube, a whole bunch of things. So yeah, thanks all so much for being here. This is a bit of an experiment. I strongly encourage you with the book that we're going to be reading today to actually go and get the book for yourself on Audible and dive into it. But having said that, I think you're going to get something valuable out of this process as well. I think I am. We all are. So shortly we're going to start the book, and what I'd love you to do is every time that the author says something that really stands out to you, just type it in the chat, and then every once in a while we're going to pause the book, have a bit of a chat about it, and see if sorry, my COVID throat, and see if we can learn something new. What else can I tell you? Now, this is not financial advice, okay? I'm not a financial advisor. It's for entertainment purposes only. There's a bunch of books in my library, and if this is going well, we'll just keep doing it. We'll keep digging up books and going through, and hopefully we can all grow together. So I've read these books multiple times and implemented these things into my life for the most part. Like, I really like to test and measure every tool that I'm given, even if I think it's crazy. And then once I do that, I'll decide if it's going to work for me or not. That's pretty standard, right? I'm going to play the book at 1.1 times speed so that we just have a little bit more, well, 10% faster. We're going to go through the book. That gives us more talking time, because as I said, you could go out there and you can just get this book on Audible yourself and listen to it. I'm more interested in the conversations that we're going to have than to read a book. Like, we're all grown-ups with, who are up to big stuff. So let's, like, I'm assuming that you can easily download a book and read it, but I'm looking at how can we look at this through the lens of what's happening in the stock market right now, in the crypto markets. Again, reminding you, this is not financial advice. The other thing is, you might have read this book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, 10 times already, 100 times. But I still invite you to listen to it newly. And the reason for that is, if you imagine a bicycle riding down the street and the wheel is rotating. And, if you pick up a bike and rotate the wheel in exactly the same position, yeah, there's nothing different about that rotation. But if you're a bike riding down the street of life, okay, every time that wheel does a rotation, although the rotation kind of could feel the same, the bike is in a completely different location with completely different environmental factors impacting it. And that's kind of what I'm thinking could be useful to you. So just checking over on Discord, can you guys still hear me okay, even though I'm sharing my screen and doing all of that? And hopefully people on Facebook and all those other platforms can hear me okay as well. I really am going to struggle to be across the various different platforms and try and keep up with messages. So I really, and Twitch as well. So I hope that I can not leave anybody out or feel like I'm ignoring anybody. So I'll do my best. Let's see what we can do. That's all we can do. Okay. Okay. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to get up the tab that has the audiobook in it, and I'm going to share that. So Cynthia, can you confirm that you can still hear me, please, over on Discord? Great. You can hear me, Alexa? Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much. Great. Just need to know that people on Discord can hear me as well, because that's our main promoted place. Not hearing anything back from Discord at the moment. Yep, Cynthia's typing. Great. Awesome. Thank you very much. All right, let's get the book up and we're going to get started. So what I'm asking you to do is, every time the author says something, a word, a phrase, a sentence that lands for you, type it into the chat. Then I'm just going to read these out. We're going to just do the introduction. Then we're going to go through what people have typed and just discuss it a bit. You can even come up on the stream as well. If you want audio or video, I can bring you up. But if you just want to type as well, that's fine. But as you're hearing things, as they land for you, type them into the chat. Okay. Let's see. Where is my? Here we go. Cloud Player Audible. Now, Cynthia and people on Facebook, if you can just confirm that you can hear when I play this book, So I'm just going to play a little bit of it. If you can both confirm to me that you can hear perfectly, then I'll continue.
To parents everywhere, a child's first and most important teachers, and to all those who educate, influence, and lead by example.
All right, can we hear that? Is that hearable on Facebook and on Discord, please? Just waiting to hear back. Can hear. Great. Awesome, Travis. Thank you. Great. Thank you for that. Appreciate that. Great. Alexa can hear. Cynthia, can you hear in Discord? And then we're going to get the show on the road. Awesome. All right. So this is going to go for 15 minutes, 35 seconds, right? So sit back. I've got a tea and a coffee and a water. Okay. You're going to just get to look at me as well. Actually, what I'll do, yeah, I'll still keep myself on camera. I want to be here with you. So let's do it. Okay.
Acknowledgements. How does a person say thank you when there are so many people to thank? Obviously, this book is a thank you to my two fathers, who were powerful role models, and to my mom, who taught me love and kindness. The person most responsible for this book becoming a reality is my wife, Kim, my partner in marriage, business, and in life. She makes my life complete. Introduction. Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. I had two fathers, a rich one and a poor one. One was highly educated and intelligent. He had a PhD and completed 4 years of undergraduate work in less than 2 years. He then went on to Stanford University, the University of Chicago, and Northwestern University to do his advanced studies, all on full financial scholarships. The other father never finished the 8th grade. Both men were successful in their careers, working hard all their lives. Both earned substantial incomes, yet one always struggled financially. The other would become one of the richest men in Hawaii. One died, leaving tens of millions of dollars to his family, charities, and his church. The other left bills to be paid. Both men were strong, charismatic, and influential. Both men offered me advice, but they did not advise the same things. Both men believed strongly in education, but did not recommend the same course of study. If I had had only one dad, I would have had to accept or reject his advice. Having two dads offered me the choice of contrasting points of view, one of a rich man and one of a poor man. Instead of simply accepting or rejecting one or the other, I found myself thinking more, comparing, and then choosing for myself. The problem was that the rich man was not rich yet, and the poor man was not yet poor. Both were just starting out on their careers, and both were struggling with money and families. But they had very different points of view about money. For example, one dad would say, "The love of money is the root of all evil." The other said, "The lack of money is the root of all evil." As a young boy, having two strong fathers, both influencing me, was difficult. I wanted to be a good son and listen, but the two fathers did not say the same things. The contrast in their points of view, particularly about money, was so extreme that I grew curious and intrigued. I began to start thinking for long periods of time about what each was saying. Much of my private time was spent reflecting, asking myself questions such as, "Why does he say that?" and then asking the same question of the other dad's statement. It would have been much easier to simply say, "Yeah, he's right. I agree with that." Or to simply reject the point of view by saying, "The old man doesn't know what he's talking about." Instead, having two dads whom I loved forced me to think and ultimately choose a way of thinking for myself. As a process, choosing for myself turned out to be much more valuable in the long run than simply accepting or rejecting a single point of view. One of the reasons the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, and the middle class struggles in debt is that the subject of money is taught at home, not in school. Most of us learn about money from our parents. So what can poor parents tell their child about money? They simply say, "Stay in school and study hard." The child may graduate with excellent grades, but with a poor person's financial programming and mindset. Sadly, money is not taught in schools. Schools focus on scholastic and professional skills, but not on financial skills. This explains how smart bankers, doctors, and accountants who earned excellent grades may struggle financially all of their lives. Our staggering national debt is due in large part to highly educated politicians and government officials making financial decisions with little or no training in the subject of money. Today, I often wonder what will soon happen when we have millions of people who need financial and medical assistance. They will be dependent upon their families or the government for financial support. What will happen when Medicare and Social Security run out of money? How will a nation survive if teaching children about money continues to be left to parents, most of whom will be, or already are, poor? Because I had two influential fathers, I learned from both of them. I had to think about each dad's advice, and in doing so, I gained valuable insight into the power and effect of one's thoughts on one's life. For example, one dad had a habit of saying, "I can't afford it." The other dad forbade those words to be used. He insisted I ask, "How can I afford it?" One is a statement, and the other is a question. One lets you off the hook, and the other forces you to think. My soon-to-be rich dad would explain that by automatically saying the words, "I can't afford it," your brain stops working. By asking the question, "How can I afford it?" your brain is put to work. He did not mean that you should buy everything you want. He was fanatical about exercising your mind, the most powerful computer in the world. He'd say, "My brain gets stronger every day because I exercise it. The stronger it gets, the more money I can make." He believed that automatically saying, "I can't afford it," was a sign of mental laziness. Although both dads worked hard, I noticed that one dad had a habit of putting his brain to sleep when it came to finances, and the other had a habit of exercising his brain. The long-term result was that one dad grew stronger financially, and the other grew weaker. It is not much different from a person who goes to the gym to exercise on a regular basis versus someone who sits on the couch watching television. Proper physical exercise increases your chances for health, and proper mental exercise increases your chances for wealth. My two dads had opposing attitudes, and that affected the way they thought. One dad thought that the rich should pay more in taxes to take care of those less fortunate. The other said, "Taxes punish those who produce and reward those who don't produce." One dad recommended, "Study hard so you can find a good company to work for." The other recommended, "Study hard so you can find a good company to buy." One dad said, "The reason I'm not rich is because I have you kids." The other said, "The reason I must be rich is because I have you kids." One encouraged talking about money and business at the dinner table, while the other forbade the subject of money to be discussed over a meal. One said, "When it comes to money, play it safe. Don't take risks." The other said, "Learn to manage risk." One believed, "Our home is our largest investment and our greatest asset." The other believed, "My house is a liability, and if your house is your largest investment, you're in trouble." Both dads paid their bills on time, yet one paid his bills first while the other paid his bills last. One dad believed in a company or the government taking care of you and your needs. He was always concerned about pay raises, retirement plans, medical benefits, sick leave, vacation days, and other perks. He was impressed with two of his uncles who joined the military and earned a retirement and entitlement package for life after 20 years of active service. He loved the idea of medical benefits and PX privileges the military provided its retirees. He also loved the tenure system available through the university. The idea of job protection for life and job benefits seemed more important at times than the job. He would often say, "I've worked hard for the government and I'm entitled to these benefits." The other believed in total financial self-reliance. He spoke out against the entitlement mentality and how it created weak and financially needy people. He was emphatic about being financially competent. One dad struggled to save a few dollars. The other created investments. One dad taught me how to write an impressive resume so I could find a good job. The other taught me how to write strong business and financial plans so I could create jobs. Being a product of two strong dads allowed me the luxury of observing the effects different thoughts have on one's life. I noticed that people really do shape their lives through their thoughts. For example, my poor dad always said, "I'll never be rich," and that prophecy became reality. My rich dad, on the other hand, always referred to himself as rich. He would say things like, "I'm a rich man and rich people don't do this." Even when he was flat broke after a major financial setback, he continued to refer to himself as a rich man. He would cover himself by saying, "There is a difference between being poor and being broke. Broke is temporary. Poor is eternal." My poor dad would say, "I'm not interested in money," or "Money doesn't matter." My rich dad always said, "Money is power." The power of our thoughts may never be measured or appreciated, but it became obvious to me as a young boy that it was important to be aware of my thoughts and how I expressed myself. I noticed that my poor dad was poor, not because of the amount of money he earned, which was significant, but because of his thoughts and actions. As a young boy having two fathers, I became acutely aware of being careful about which thoughts I chose to adopt as my own. Should I listen to my rich dad or to my poor dad? Although both men had tremendous respect for education and learning, they disagreed about what they thought was important to learn. One wanted me to study hard, earn a degree, and get a good job to earn money. He wanted me to study to become a professional, an attorney or an accountant, and to go to business school for my MBA. The other encouraged me to study to be rich, to understand how money works, and to learn how to have it work for me. "I don't work for money" were words he would repeat over and over. "Money works for me." At the age of 9, I decided to listen to and learn from my rich dad about money. In doing so, I chose not to listen to my poor dad, even though he was the one with all the college degrees. A lesson from Robert Frost. Robert Frost is my favorite poet. Although I love many of his poems, my favorite is "The Road Not Taken." I use its lesson almost daily. The road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth, then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear. Though as for that the passing there had worn them really about the same, and both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day, yet knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I should ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. And that has made all the difference. Over the years, I have often reflected upon Robert Frost's poem. Choosing not to listen to my highly educated dad's advice and attitude about money was a painful decision, but it was a decision that shaped the rest of my life. Once I made up my mind about whom to listen to, my education about money began. My rich dad taught me over a period of 30 years until I was 39 years old. He stopped once he realized that I knew and fully understood what he had been trying to drum into my often thick skull. Money is one form of power, but what is more powerful is financial education. Money comes and goes, but if you have the education about how money works, you gain power over it and can begin building wealth. The reason positive thinking alone does not work is because most people went to school and never learned how money works. So they spend their lives working for money. Because I was only 9 years old when I started, the lessons my rich dad taught me were simple. And when it was all said and done, there were only 6 main lessons repeated over 30 years. This audiobook is about those 6 lessons, put as simply as possible, just as simply as my rich dad put forth those lessons to me. The lessons are meant not to be answers, but guideposts that will assist you and your children to grow wealthier no matter what happens in a world of increasing change and uncertainty.
Awesome.
Chapter 1.
All right.
Lesson 1.
Pause there for a second. So I think I'm the one commenting so far, but we can read what I've talked about. And I really encourage you to give me feedback, make this an interactive experience if possible, because that's what it's here for. It's here to kind of help us all sharpen our financial literacy. I mean, look, this might be on in the background while you're doing other things. That's fine too. This might be something you're really pulling towards you. This might be something you've read a gazillion times. Doesn't matter. Like, however you are is perfect with me. But I would love a discussion. So here's the things that stood out to me. So I'm just going to kind of recap some of them and talk about how that's impacted me so far. So yeah, the concept that big income people can still struggle, and the book definitely goes into this down, a bit further down the road. But I've first of all been that, and second of all, I've really looked up to people in positions of high income. But what goes on behind the scenes, it's very difficult to know when someone is like actually wealthy or wealthy for the sake of or looking wealthy, like for the sake of status. It's very difficult to know, and it's also very difficult to know. There's probably a lot of very wealthy people in our midst who really give you no inclination that they're that way at all. Money actually probably doesn't even mean anything to them. They've earned their money and then it's on the side. So it's very difficult. It's like this kind of extroverted display of wealth. But I think that often then causes people to look up to, like when I was younger, it would be very easy for me to look up to people who are obviously wealthy and then try to copy them and copy their ways. When I was young, my parents taught me that if you don't have enough money, make more money. But that didn't work for me. That's definitely not a financially literate kind of approach to money, I don't think. It has merit in certain circumstances, but it probably caused me more trouble than it was worth. So I like that the book's going to explore that. And I really like the idea that the contrasting points of view, especially strong opinions around you, really create like a platform for inquiry. So, like at the moment, my niece, she's deciding what to do at uni, whether to stay in uni, all of these sorts of things, whether to follow her passions or whether to do what the status quo is and study something like law or whatever else she could get into that she's not really passionate about. There's all these sorts of, and lots of people are giving her opinions, but ultimately she's going to have to decide. And hopefully in the process of making that decision, like listening to all these opinions and then ultimately making a decision and backing herself, there's going to be amazing growth there. So I really think it's great to welcome the embracing of lots of strong opinions around us. Yep, still here on my own as far, but for people who are watching, I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. What else have I got here? Yeah, and we assume that schools give us all the skills we need, and we know that as parents, I guess we know that for the most part, schools don't. There's a lot you still have to teach kids at home, but for some reason, we assume that because schools are educational environments that we can take our foot off the pedal. So with my kids, I'm really focused on books like The Barefoot Investor, which we'll probably read at some point. And also just having them not get anything too easily financially. I mean, they're 18 and 16 now. They've got their investments like shares and crypto and those sorts of things. And it's not big amounts, but the key is to have them with their toe in the water so that they're learning about these things and actually taking risks. Oh, got a comment. Oh, the love of money is the root of all evil. The lack of money is the root of all evil. I love that, Alexa. Like that's the two dads right there. And I think that like I can imagine those dads would be so passionate about that viewpoint that it would occur like the truth. And yet neither is the truth. Money is money and that's all it is. But it's a lot easier when we have it to make the choices that we want to make. That's for sure. And I know that for my like 20s and 30s, money seemed really out of reach for me. It seemed like something that I would someday be able to have. And then all of a sudden, like, I became passionate about financial literacy, and things started to really open up for me. And that's why we're doing this. That's why we want to. That's why we want to keep. And like right now, because I'm in a position of a crypto company in a general management role, there's a lot of people who come into the groups, into the communities, and they're either brand new investors or they are seasoned crypto investors. But there's all these kind of mixture of people, but they either bring like total passion about the project or fear and uncertainty and doubt, FUD, about the project. And like what I'm trying to do here is create an environment where we can not be on that roller coaster together. We can just grow through this and learn. The camera's lagging a little bit. But yeah, thanks for that comment, Alexa. I really appreciate it. What else? What else? What else? How can I afford it? Like, I love the idea of rephrasing things as a question. I think that there's a lot of power in rephrasing whatever we have a fixed view about as a question. So instead of I can't afford it, how can I afford it? Or I can't lose that weight. Like, how can I lose that weight? Or I can't get my kids to do their homework. How can I get my kids to do their homework? Obviously, it opens up a whole new realm. And that's exactly what we want here. We've got some new comments. I'm all here for this kind of information. Thank you so much, Mahesh. I really appreciate that. That's wonderful. Love the vibes. I love the vibes too, Mahesh. Thank you so much. All right. And Cynthia says, don't work for money, money work for us. But how much wealthy you are, if you don't know how to manage money, you will lose. Yeah. So this is the thing, like, this is the journey we're going to go on, Cynthia. We're going to actually learn over the next, like, I want to do this every week forever. Like, if I can maintain this every week, we're going to spend an hour developing our financial literacy. And there was a time where everything I touched turned to crap. And now not everything I touch turns to gold, but there is definitely a new level of financial literacy that I bring into business and I bring to my personal life. G'day, Harley. Yeah, there's a new level of financial literacy that really has shifted the way that happens, and there's a much higher success rate for me in my life. So that's why I want to share that, especially in these crazy markets right now, with what's happening in the stock market, what's happening in the crypto markets. My personal view is I'm buying throughout this phase. Not a lot, definitely not a lot, because I don't know what's happening, but I don't want the experience of being in this financial market and saying it's all crap. Yeah, I am, Mahesh. I'm streaming on a lot of platforms right now, so hopefully we're gonna it's all going well, and all of, who knows. Yeah, the idea is that in these markets, for me, they're an opportunity, and I know that Warren Buffett talks about that as well. Is like, you buy things when they're on special. So yes, I've lost money in this time as well, but I'm not focused on that, because what's the point? It's like if you take a sports match or a chess match or whatever, and you lose that match, it's important to take the lessons from it and keep moving forward and keep growing. And also, the loss only happens when it's declared as a loss. Like, if I am to sell my crypto that I bought at X, if I sell it now while it's at Y, it's a loss. If I don't sell it now, it's not a loss. I'm not saying do or don't sell. I really want to get this clear. I'm not a financial advisor, but I'm saying it's only a loss when you say it's a loss. So up until then, it's up to you to do things and stay in the game. All right, what else have we got here? Yeah, I really like the idea, and the book goes into this. Let me just double check. Yeah, of where are we being mentally lazy? So for a while, my sugar addiction really crept up. I'm definitely a sugar addict. Like, I've been addicted to many things in my life. Alcohol, weed, you name it, in my younger years. Just so many things, but sugar is the one thing that, like, really impacts my life still today if I let it. So yeah, I think that comes from mental laziness. It comes from when I let things creep back into my life. Then what happens is it starts small and it slowly takes hold. So it's like if I'm not focused and sharp and have great structure, things fall off. And I see it around me a lot. And I spend a lot of my life devoted to staying mentally sharp and not being mentally lazy. But it's a creeper. It's insidious. It starts off small. It's hard to notice. It sits in blind spots. So I definitely invite you, and I'm interested to know where you think you're being mentally lazy. Well, what have we got? Hey, Mike, you don't make a profit when you sell. You make a profit when you buy. Yeah, no, I like that, Mike. Absolutely. Yes. That's another cool factor to consider is that good investors don't buy for the long term. They buy something that they can turn for a profit right now. That's a really important lesson that I learned the hard way. I used to think if I invest in this, then someday it's going to be worthwhile. No way. That's not a good way to go, because, well, life has a habit of getting in the way of those sorts of things. So it's a great mental process. It's a great, strategy. All right, we're doing well. It's 9:36. Okay, house is a liability. Look, that is a controversial statement. A lot of people get triggered by that. I'm going to let the book explain that over time as we delve into those chapters. But that really, when I first heard that, I was like, what? But I really like this book's definition of what an asset and what a liability is. It's very simple, but I won't be a spoiler on that in case you haven't read this book yet. Financial self-reliance. This responsibility. So for me, responsibility is absolutely everything in life. There's a natural pull, like gravity, if you like, for you to go with the flow, not be responsible for your own outcomes, to be a victim. That's life, you know. But what it takes is you to say, no, everything that's happening in my world is on me. I have a level of responsibility, and it really doesn't matter how serious that issue. And it's not always the truth. Like if you get, I don't know, if something major happens to you and it's totally outside your control, there's still an option to stand there for a moment and say, well, let's just imagine that it's all my fault now. What could I have done differently? Okay. And again, that's controversial stuff, but don't let that take you away from the power of taking full responsibility for everything in your life. We can dig into that later as well. And I love this definition. Broke is temporary and poor is eternal. So it's like a state of mind. I've been broke. I had a company, Eversolar. It was a really tragic outcome. It involved, loaned money. It involved all sorts of things, but we got through it. And, I'm still dealing with cleaning that up. But the thing is, I never see myself as poor, because I am enriched by so much that's around me. Money's an aspect of that, but there's love, there's support, there's friendship networks, there's other businesses. There's so much there that, like, I actually grew from the downfall of that business. And it certainly never existed to me as something that would impact the rest of my life in a negative way. And in fact, all the people that we, owed money to and are sorting them out, there's been growth there as well. There's been amazing growth. So, yeah. So I really invite you to see broke as temporary, poor is eternal. Don't be poor. Let's be broke. Let's be temporarily broke. Okay. Education comes in different forms. Yes. Yeah. Alexa, you said the same thing as me. Yeah, absolutely. So let's definitely let's focus on that. Education comes in different forms as well. Like I can really remember now how focused I was on my children's school education, and it sent one of my kids to rebel basically against that situation. She's now in uni, but it really was not. It didn't help it. My focus on the school system. This book has amazing views on the school system, and if I had a really young child again, my views about school would be different, and the way that I parent them would be different. Because I also, when I reflect, I was a very rebellious school kid, and I thought I hated education, but actually education is one of my most favorite things. Like I love learning chess and jujitsu and business and communication. I love learning about streaming across multiple platforms. I love learning about crypto. There's so many things I could list to you that I love learning about. I love learning to be a good partner, whatever. You know, a good parent, being a better driver, being a better camper. You know, I love learning. So I know now in hindsight, like I kind of lumped education into a category and rebelled against the whole shebang. But actually, it was just that at the time I was resisting and rebelling school. The poor and the middle class work for money, and the rich have money work for them. That's right, Alexa. So the funny thing about that is, like, we deal with a lot of developing nations, and our goal is to really create wealthy people in those developing nations. Obviously, there's extremes there, but my view, having studied what I'm studying now, is that anybody in any circumstance can become wealthy if they're willing to educate themselves. I definitely believe that. So that's what we're here to do, okay, is make wealthy people so that they can have more choices and impact more lives. Yeah, and our choices matter long term. So this is about the path. I can't remember the name of the poem he read, but for me, like life is going to pull you towards the path that everybody's following, and you it's like it's going to seem natural to go down that path, but where the like there's no cheese down that tunnel. Okay, there's no cheese. There's no well, there might be happy endings at the end of that path, but more likely you're just going to go where everybody goes. It's very trampled. There's not a lot of resources there because everybody's already been there. So where it is when you're willing to take that more challenging, more interesting, less traveled path, and like your spidey senses tingle when you're going to take that path. It's like maybe they're not taking this path because it's dangerous. You know, all sorts of weird stories come up like that. But in my experience, that's where the joy is. So, you know, I hope that you see that too. All right, what have we got here? Okay, so what I'm going to do now, we've got, well, cheese. Yeah, cheese and happy endings. I admit I could work on my analogies a little bit, Mike, no doubt. I'll get better. I'll get better over time. All right, so what we'll do now, we'll listen to a little bit more of the book. Maybe we'll do, it's 9:42 a.m. So why don't we do 10 minutes of the book, 10 minutes of discussion. Feel free to put comments in as you're listening so that we can scroll back over them. And I'm hoping to build a real community here of like lots of interaction. You guys have already been amazing. Like I'm so grateful. I couldn't ask for, you know, a better first go at this than we're having. But yeah, feel free to keep leveling up your contribution as we go through this. Hey, Mahesh. Cool. Thank you. I can't quite tell what that icon is, but I think you're waving. All right, here we go. Let's listen to 10 minutes more, or 7 minutes more. Then we'll have 10 minutes of talking, and then we'll finish up for this week.
The rich don't work for money. The poor and the middle class work for money. The rich have money work for them. Dad, can you tell me how to get rich? My dad put down the evening paper. Why do you want to get rich, son? Because today Jimmy's mom drove up in their new Cadillac and they were going to their beach house for the weekend. He took 3 of his friends, but Mike and I weren't invited. They told us we weren't invited because we were poor kids. They did? My dad asked incredulously. Yeah, they did, I replied in a hurt tone. My dad silently shook his head, pushed his glasses up the bridge of his nose, and went back to reading the paper. I stood waiting for an answer. The year was 1956. I was 9 years old. By some twist of fate, I attended the same public school where the rich people sent their kids. We were primarily a sugar plantation town. The managers of the plantation and the other affluent people, such as doctors, business owners, and bankers, sent their children to this elementary school. After grade 6, their children were generally sent off to private schools. Because my family lived on one side of the street, I went to this school. Had I lived on the other side of the street, I would have gone to a different school with kids from families more like mine. After grade 6, these kids and I would go on to the public intermediate and high school. There was no private school for them or for me. My dad finally put down the paper. I could tell he was thinking. Well, son, he began slowly. If you want to be rich, you have to learn to make money. How do I make money? I asked. Well, use your head, son, he said, smiling. Even then, I knew that really meant, that's all I'm going to tell you, or, I don't know the answer, so don't embarrass me. A partnership is formed. The next morning, I told my best friend, Mike, what my dad had said. As best as I could tell, Mike and I were the only poor kids in this school. Mike was also in this school by a twist of fate. Someone had drawn a jog in the line for the school district, and we wound up in school with the rich kids. We weren't really poor, but we felt as if we were because all the other boys had new baseball gloves, new bicycles, new everything. Mom and Dad provided us with the basics, like food and shelter and clothes, but that was about it. My dad used to say, if you want something, work for it. We wanted things, but there was not much work available for 9-year-old boys. So what do we do to make money? Mike asked. I don't know, I said, but do you want to be my partner? He agreed, and so on that Saturday morning, Mike became my first business partner. We spent all morning coming up with ideas on how to make money. Occasionally, we talked about all the cool guys at Jimmy's beach house having fun. It hurt a little, but that hurt was good because it inspired us to keep thinking of a way to make money. Finally, that afternoon, a bolt of lightning struck. It was an idea Mike got from a science book he had read. Excitedly, we shook hands, and the partnership now had a business. For the next several weeks, Mike and I ran around our neighborhood, knocking on doors and asking our neighbors if they would save their toothpaste tubes for us. With puzzled looks, most adults consented with a smile. Some asked us what we were doing, to which we replied, "We can't tell you. It's a business secret." My mom grew distressed as the weeks wore on. We had selected a site next to her washing machine as the place we would stockpile our raw materials. In a brown cardboard box that at one time held ketchup bottles, our little pile of used toothpaste tubes began to grow. Finally, my mom put her foot down. The sight of her neighbor's messy, crumpled used toothpaste tubes had gotten to her. "What are you boys doing?" she asked. "And I don't want to hear again that it's a business secret. Do something with this mess or I'm going to throw it out." Mike and I pleaded and begged, explaining that we would soon have enough and then we would begin production. We informed her that we were waiting on a couple of neighbors to finish their toothpaste so we could have their tubes. Mom granted us a 1-week extension. The date to begin production was moved up, and the pressure was on. My first partnership was already being threatened with an eviction notice by my own mom. It became Mike's job to tell the neighbors to quickly use up their toothpaste, saying their dentist wanted them to brush more often anyway. I began to put together the production line. One day, my dad drove up with a friend to see 2 9-year-old boys in the driveway with the production line operating at full speed. There was fine white powder everywhere. On a long table were small milk cartons from school, and our family's hibachi grill was glowing with red-hot coals at maximum heat. Dad walked up cautiously, having to park the car at the base of the driveway since the production line blocked the carport. As he and his friend got closer, they saw a steel pot sitting on top of the coals in which the toothpaste tubes were being melted down. In those days, toothpaste did not come in plastic tubes. The tubes were made of lead, so once the paint was burned off, the tubes were dropped in the small steel pot. They melted until they became liquid, and with my mom's pot holders, we poured the lead through a small hole in the top of the milk cartons. The milk cartons were filled with plaster of Paris. White powder was everywhere. In my haste, I had knocked the bag over, and the entire area looked like it had been hit by a snowstorm. The milk cartons were the outer containers for plaster of Paris molds. My dad and his friend watched as we carefully poured the molten lead through a small hole in the top of the plaster of Paris cube. "Careful," my dad said. I nodded without looking up. Finally, once the pouring was through, I put the steel pot down and smiled at my dad. "What are you boys doing?" he asked with a cautious smile. "We're doing what you told me to do. We're going to be rich," I said. "Yup," said Mike, grinning and nodding his head. "We're partners." "And what is in those plaster molds?" my dad asked. "Watch," I said. "This should be a good batch." With a small hammer, I tapped at the seal that divided the cube in half. Cautiously, I pulled up the top half of the plaster mold, and a lead nickel fell out. "Oh my God," my dad said, "you're casting nickels out of lead." "That's right," Mike said. "We're doing as you told us to do. We're making money." My dad's friend turned and burst into laughter. My dad smiled and shook his head. Along with a fire and a box of spent toothpaste tubes, in front of him were two little boys covered with white dust, smiling from ear to ear. He asked us to put everything down and sit with him on the front step of our house. With a smile, he gently explained what the word counterfeiting meant. Our dreams were dashed. "You mean this is illegal?" asked Mike in a quivering voice. "Let them go," my dad's friend said. "They might be developing a natural talent." My dad glared at him. "Yes, it is illegal," my dad said gently, "but you boys have shown great creativity and original thought. Keep going. I'm really proud of you." Disappointed, Mike and I sat in silence for about 20 minutes before we began cleaning up our mess. The business was over on opening day. Sweeping the powder up, I looked at Mike and said, "I guess Jimmy and his friends are right. We are poor." My father was just leaving as I said that. "Boys," he said, "you're only poor if you give up. The most important thing is that you did something. Most people only talk and dream of getting rich. You've done something. I'm very proud of the two of you. I will say it again. Keep going. Don't quit." Mike and I stood there in silence. They were nice words, but we still did not know what to do. "So how come you're not rich, Dad?" I asked. "Because I chose to be a school teacher. School teachers really don't think about being rich. We just like to teach. I wish I could help you, but I really don't know how to make money." Mike and I turned and continued our cleanup. "I know," said my dad. "If you boys want to learn how to be rich, don't ask me. Talk to your dad, Mike." "My dad?" asked Mike with a scrunched up face. "Yeah, your dad," repeated my dad with a smile. "Your dad and I have the same banker, and he raves about your father. He's told me several times that your father is brilliant when it comes to making money." "My dad?" Mike asked again in disbelief. "Then how come we don't have a nice car and a nice house like the rich kids at school?" "A nice car and a nice house don't necessarily mean you're rich or you know how to make money," my dad replied. "Jimmy's dad works for the sugar plantation. He's not much different from me. He works for a company and I work for the government. The company buys the car for him. The sugar company is in financial trouble and Jimmy's dad may soon have nothing. Your dad is different, Mike. He seems to be building an empire, and I suspect in a few years he will be a very rich man."
All right. So we're 10 minutes 47 into chapter 1. And I think that's a good place to stop with the book. So the things that really stand out to me is that, yeah, we really do compare ourselves against others. We're constantly in this realm of comparison. And more often than not, it doesn't serve us. It leads to either complacency, if we think we're already there, or it leads to feeling like we can't get there. Sometimes it really drives people. Sometimes it really calls people into actions like, I've got to be as good as that person. Otherwise, I'm a failure to myself. And then they go for it. I guess that's great. There's still a cost to that, but it's going to work. But beware of constantly comparing ourselves to others, because as this book has been talking about, the appearance of people doesn't mean that they're in the clear, and you could be, I guess, working or following somebody, trying to imitate somebody who's not actually where you want to be. And if you want something, be prepared to work for it and work hard for it. That's definitely in my experience. Like, I think that it doesn't necessarily, like some people say work smarter, not harder, but I think there's an element of both personally. Like I know very few people who have just been in the right place, right time. They haven't done anything and and they've ended up being where they want to be financially. I think that grinding is also part of creating the mental toughness that's required to be on the roller coaster. So, a mixture of taking action, excuse me, a mixture of taking action, being willing to take some small risks, and being willing to work really hard has certainly been the key to, to my development in my later years financially. And I'm sure lots of people have different experiences, but that's just what's worked for me. And creativity and original thought, like that's another thing that really stood out for me in this book, was that the kids, although they were counterfeiting, they really they were coming up with ideas, and that can start really young. That entrepreneurial spirit can start young. And as a parent, like that also happened with my kids, but somehow what I did was got too involved, essentially. Like I made it too easy for them. They didn't get the experience of working hard. They didn't get the reward of being rewarded for working hard, and so they just lost interest. So, like again, that kind of like it's just totally anecdotal. It's my family's experience, but I really feel like I could have done things differently in the raising of my children by not having things come to them so easily, so that they got that sense of achievement, and it would have created a strong work ethic. Turns out both of them do have a strong work ethic in their, at this point in their life. That's still plenty of time for that to change. But I don't think it came from what I was teaching them about their entrepreneurial spirit. If anything, like I know that my ability to grind and work harder than most people came from resisting university. Like I really wanted to show my parents that I didn't need to go and get a university education in order to be successful. And the path was hard, and there was plenty of failure strewn all about the place. And then it just caused me to work harder and harder and harder, like a dog with a bone, just refusing to give it up, was what resulted in, I guess, businesses that can now sustain me, would be the best way to put it. And taking action is the key. So that brings us to the end of book club, unless anybody else has got any comments that they'd like to raise. But what I would love is, like this week, either go grab the book and listen to it. Feel free to do that. Or just keep looking in your life at the people around you. Like just observe. And are they where you would want to be? Are they not where you would want to be? Are they putting up a front? Are they like are they being authentic? Can you learn from them? I guess from the context of this book, are they taking risks? Are they taking the path that everybody takes, or are they beating their own path? Just kind of become observant of people, just for the sake of it. Why not? And we're going to meet again next Friday. The other thing is, feel free to invite anyone at all. Like I don't. This is just a contribution, really. There's no motive in this other than just sharing knowledge, and getting together and collaborating. Thanks, Mike. I appreciate that. I really do. And I'm going to keep it up, and I hope you can come back next Friday. I really appreciated your contributions too. And if you guys have any advice for me on how to make this better, then that's great too. But I think the formula seems to have worked. So yeah, I wish you all a wonderful, wonderful weekend. Thank you, Alexa, too. Thanks for your contributions. This is recorded as well, so feel free to share it. I'm probably going to get done for copyright at some point, but hopefully Robert Kiyosaki will go lightly on me, knowing that I'm promoting his book, and yeah, hopefully he can, you won't see me in court in some controversial case. But I'm glad you got something out of it, Mahesh. That's wonderful. And let's continue our journey next week from 10 minutes, 47 seconds into chapter 1. All right, everybody, have a great weekend. Peace out.